Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Tim Pearce, and as you can see from the slide in front of you, I'm accompanied today by my colleague Mark Taylor, who works for HMRC. Mark will introduce himself after the look at kind of a brief overview of the agenda for today's webinar. Okay, so in terms of the agenda today, most of it will be based on Mark's slides that he'll present very shortly. He's going to provide an overview in terms of HMRC, the entity journey to date. Following on from Mark's slides, we're then going to have a look at the digital change in terms of how our solution, our bridging solution, can potentially help accountants. And then we'll hold open for a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Mark, and Mark will introduce himself and commence from there. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Thanks very much, Tim, and morning, everybody. As Tim said, my name is Mark Taylor. I work for HMRC, and my role within HMRC is I am a digital relationship manager. And what that means is that it's my responsibility to work closely with the third-party software industry as they are building the necessary software programs that will enable yourselves currently and in the future to comply with all of the necessary legislation that is laid down from HMRC. So we're really working quite closely hand in hand with BTC and the rest of the guys out there that are building the apps for Making Tax Digital, which is why we're all sat here today. So what I'm going to do is just give an overview of Making Tax Digital for Business, kind of where we are, why we're here, what's happened so far, and kind of what will be coming in the future, and hopefully give you some tips along the way about what you guys need to do to get ready from a HMRC point of view before Tim gives you the BTC demo. Okay. So I'll start off with our vision from HMRC for Making Tax Digital. So Making Tax Digital is, making fundamental changes to the way the tax system works. Real transformation program, not only internally, not only externally from what you see and what you're going to have to comply with, but there's also a huge program going on internally that supports all of that work. But the fundamental aims is that we want to be much more effective, more efficient, and make it easier for taxpayers to get it right. And those really are the core principles on why we're building MTD in the way we are. So as I mentioned briefly there, there's not just the activities that you need to change yourselves in terms of getting your third-party software, but there's a huge internal transformation within HMRC to move us from our existing legacy systems that support VAT filing now and income tax, and we're moving on to a new accounting system. So there's a huge amount of work that will go on unseen externally to HMRC as well. So the question is, why the Making Tax Digital? So I think these, in this day and age now, there's a real expectation that there's a digital kind of future first, and everything is interacted with in a digital way. So most people now have smartphones and laptops and tablets and all those kind of things, and people are becoming more and more familiar with doing any of their interactions with any organisations through that way. And it plays into HMRC's hand, because our ambition, and it might sound a really lofty ambition, but we really want to become the most digitally advanced tax administration in the world. So all of these things are steps towards us meeting that ambition. So it brings us into the 21st century, and will let us concentrate on let businesses concentrate on thriving and growing rather than just doing tax. So this is real partnership with software and HMRC to make the filing of tax returns as easy as possible, all dealt with in your software, so it doesn't come that one hit burden that it can often seem right now. So and along with that, Making Tax Digital is really seen as a key driver to reducing error for HMRC, and error accounts for a large proportion of the tax gap that we already have. So I think the latest figures I have on the tax gap show it stands at 9.4 billion now. And even with the introduction of RTI on the payroll pay-as-you-earn side, we saw the tax gap reduce as a result of RTI being brought in. So we're really looking to MTD to make real inroads into that tax gap as well, reducing those errors and reducing the money spent necessary investigating and looking at those errors. So I'll just talk a little bit about the scope of MTD now. There's been quite a bit out there in the press that is often misleading around what's happened with MTD and what it is and who it affects and when. So originally, Making Tax Digital was made up into two distinct programs, and there was Making Tax Digital for individuals and also Making Tax Digital for business. Now, with all of the things that are going out there in the political world and the necessary kind of changes that have to happen in HMRC, the scope of the Making Tax Digital for Individuals programme has been paused. So all of the work there has been stopped. What remains unaffected is the Making Tax Digital for Business programme. So we are still pressing ahead with income tax and self-assessment. Obviously, we're still pressing ahead with VAT, and it comes in next month. But we will also be looking to the future and what comes next, and the likely things that come next will be corporation tax once VAT is landed. And we'll be looking to government further down the line in 2020 for what their commitment will be to further possible changes with Making Tax Digital. So I think where we've had some misunderstanding out there in the press is when the work for Making Tax Digital for Individuals was paused. A lot of people thought that meant the Making Tax Digital for Business was also paused. But just to be clear, nothing has changed around the Making Tax Digital for Business. That's still one of HMRC's key priorities, and we press ahead with that. So just to look at the kind of timings of Making Tax Digital and what we've done and where we are right now. So at the top of the timeline you see there, you'll see the income tax self-assessment line. So we started back in April 2016 with income tax self-assessment when we launched the private beta for there. So private beta means that we're working with a small number of suppliers and customers to really help us build out that income tax self-assessment journey, so we can get a good understanding of how it works and how it will work in software. So we've been continuing that process, as you can see along that timeline, since then. So we are still building that program right up to date now, and we're still working with a small number of suppliers and customers who are submitting live data through Making Tax Digital income tax self-assessment, and we will be carrying on there, looking towards April 2020 for any potential mandation that may come in as part of that. But again, we have to wait for government commitment around any of those things. The middle line there in purple shows you where we are with VAT, which I think is why we're all here today, because that's the most pertinent issue. So we started back in October 2017 with the design and policy of legislation around that. We pushed ahead into our technical private beta internally, and then following that we moved into what we call our public beta, and that's kind of where we still are right now. We're still working with the software suppliers to get them up and running. We're working with those first kind of early adopting customers who want to get on board in our pilot and get going as soon as possible, and we've been continuing that. We've seen the numbers grow and grow. We now have, I think, over 200 software suppliers working with us as part of that, and the numbers of customers signing up on a daily basis are increasing exponentially at the moment. So obviously we're looking towards next month, not too far away at all, for April, for when we go live with Making Tax Digital for VAT. And again, there's a little note on the end of there, looking towards April 2020 for any potential further mandation. None of that is set in stone just yet. We have to wait for any commitment for government. And we've included the CT corporation tax line at the bottom there, just to show that we're still waiting for further information from that and any timings on that. So no activity has actually started on that just yet. Okay, so what exactly is Making Tax Digital? And just to be clear about these things, because there's still lots of misconceptions floating out there whenever I speak to people. They seem to come up with new ideas about what it is and what we're asking people to do. So the first point of Making Tax Digital is this really capturing transactions digitally in record keeping software as near to real time as possible. So this all plays into back to the earlier point around reducing error. If we can get those transactions recorded into software as early as possible in their contained state, those figures are fixed for us, and there's less potential for those to be changed going forward, and then they'll follow the Making Tax Digital journey through software straight into HMRC, reducing the chance for error when currently now you may be transferring figures from one system to another, and they may be typed in and retyped in elsewhere, copied and pasted, and that just, we see lots of error around those things. So this is about keeping the transactions digitally in the record keeping software and allowing those to flow through to HMRC kind of untouched as much as possible. And then when all that information is recorded, there's the same VAT 9-box data submitted to HMRC through the compatible software. So we're not asking for any further information than is already submitted now. We're simply asking for it to be captured digitally and submitted to us through software rather than possibly being keyed into the HMRC portal. So the software is interacting with HMRC through what we call APIs. So those are application programming interfaces, and this is a new platform we built in HMRC to cope with all these, and we're launching lots of APIs out for all sorts of reasons, and Making Tax Digital will be employing those APIs through third-party software to interact with HMRC. And what that means that we can actually do now in the future is we're not just receiving data from software, we can actually return data back down the API. So we can play back much more information than we have ever been able to do. And that goes directly into the software that you use, you're familiar with, and is presented in a way that suits you, rather than you having to log into separate HMRC screens to view information. And then you might have some information in your software, you might have some information in the screen, and it just removes that kind of need to go into multiple places as well. I think keen to point out here that it does not all have to be done in one piece of software. You can use multiple pieces of software along this journey, but one of the key parts of Making Tax Digital is a digital link requirement. So all of the data that is transferred between multiple pieces of software, if you do have those, must be transferred digitally. And there's more information about what that actually means in the VAT notice, which is VAT notice 700/22. So it's worth having a read of that, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay. So who is effective and when? So the key date, which I'm sure everyone is aware of, is April 2019. So the end of this month, beginning of the next month, that's when the mandation for Making Tax Digital comes in. And what that means in practice is anybody with a VAT period that begins after April or April onwards will fall into mandation for Making Tax Digital. So that's at that point, what they would have to do is start complying with the keeping of digital records. So it may be that the actual first submission doesn't come for a few months down the line after that VAT period is ended. So it could be April, May, June, and then it's in 1 month plus 7 days before your submission actually becomes due to us. But we will be asking you to keep the digital records from your mandation date. If you have a VAT period that straddles April, so maybe it starts now and ends after April, that does not fall under the Making Tax Digital mandation just yet. It's that first VAT period starting after April. So we have who we have mandated is those that are over the VAT threshold of £85,000. Those under the VAT threshold of £85,000 are not mandated into Making Tax Digital. They can carry on doing as they do now, filing, keeping their records and submitting in the way they do now. We're not asking them at the moment to change anything they do. However, they can join into Making Tax Digital on a voluntary basis, so they are not excluded from that. And hopefully people will see the benefits of getting the software and doing that, and joining the may already use software, and therefore maybe joining Making Tax Digital would be a benefit for them. As always, there are limited exemptions around anything we do in HMRC. We have a small minority of VAT registered business. I think it's around 3.5% of mandated customers who have more complex requirements around their business, and we have made the decision to defer their mandation for 6 months to allow them sufficient time for testing the new service within their more complex business setups. It's only a 6-month deferral, and then they will be brought into the same rules around making tax digital as everybody else. Any digital exemptions that exist out there, so there are a limited number of those, we will carry over into the current online filing exemptions. They won't necessarily be introducing any new ones, but again, anyone who feels they are should be exempt can apply through HMRC in the normal way, and all of those are dealt with on a case-by-case basis. So there's just the last point on that slide, which is MTD for other taxes not before 2020. So the government have confirmed that there will be no further mandation introduced before 2020, but at the moment that's as bland as we can be around that. We don't have any indication of exactly what any potential mandation would look like just yet. So I know that's a point where there are some things out there in the public domain where people think certain things are happening, but just to be clear, we don't have any kind of steer just yet from the government around exactly what may or may not be introduced. So there'll be further announcements as soon as anything is decided on. Okay. So what is changing for VAT? So I think I've already alluded to a couple of points here. So what will change is that VAT returns must be compiled from pulling data from digital records. That's your digital record keeping mandation, and VAT returns must be sent to HMRC through API-enabled products and not through the VAT portal. So all of those mandated customers, those over £85,000, they will no longer be able to make submissions through the VAT portal, or even software that they already use to make submissions through the current government gateway route. That will also be unavailable to them. They will have to make the necessary change to software that is MTD enabled and API enabled. Things that won't change, this is the frequency and payment deadlines around VAT. So we're not making any changes around those. We're simply changing the what and how of you do that. And also we're not changing anything around the data submitted to HMRC, and that's just the 9 boxes of VAT data, the summary data that you do submit now. We're not asking for any transactional data, and we don't have the ability to drill back down into your digital records that you're keeping through the APIs. All it is submission of that 9 boxes to HMRC, similar or the same as the data that is submitted now. Okay. So just to cover a bit on digital records and the data that must be recorded digitally, and I'm going to read directly from my notes here, so bear with me a second. So there's lots of information on the screen there, and there's further information in the VAT notices around digital records and what should be kept, and that's, as I mentioned earlier, that's 700/22. If you want to look on the internet for that, it's housed on gov.uk. But just to be clear on some of the points, so for each supply the business makes, you must record the time of the supply, the tax point, and the net value of the supply, excluding VAT and the rate of VAT charged. Where there is more than one supply on an invoice and those suppliers are within the same VAT period and charged at the same VAT rate, you can simply record them as a single entry. There's more information examples on how you treat different types of supplies, including mixed rate supplies and supplies made by third-party agents in the VAT notice. For each purchase you receive, you must record the time of the supply, the tax point again, and which is typically the date on the VAT invoice, or if you're in cash accounting, when the business pays for the supply. The value of the supply and the amount of the input tax to be claimed. When you don't know how much input tax to claim, for example, if it will be subject to partial exemption calculation, you have a choice of what to record. You record the total amount of the VAT on the invoice, no VAT at all, or an estimate of the VAT you will recover. You will need to do a calculation to claim the correct amount. If there is more than one supply on an invoice, you can just record the totals from the invoice. And there is more information about all of this, along with the examples, information, and other types of supplies in section 3 of the VAT notice, which again I've mentioned already, but we'll keep mentioning throughout this. So remember that the business must keep evidence to claim a deduction of input tax as they do now. Okay, slide. So MTD compatible software. So this is one of the key parts for HMRC, because as part of Making Tax Digital, we will no longer provide the facility through the portal for data to be submitted through us, and it must be through compatible software using the APIs that we've developed. And what compatible software means is a program or set of compatible software programs that must keep digital records, provide HMRC with information and returns using the APIs, and receive information from HMRC using the APIs. If multiple software is used, there must be a digital link between the products. And the key point here is, which a lot of people, it seems to get lost with a lot of people, that compatible software does include spreadsheets. However, there must be a way to extract the data via a digital link and get the submission in the right format through the APIs to HMRC. And that is where the term bridging software that you may well have heard comes from. So those people that are using software will need a piece of bridging software to enable them to submit the data that they have kept to HMRC. Okay. So a little information on the BAT pilot. So we're currently still in our BAT pilot as we head towards April. April will be when we go live fully. But at the moment we are, I guess you could say we are fully live. It is completely open to every customer that is mandated from April. So if you wanted to go away and join our pilot right now ahead of April, you can do that. You just need the compatible software to enable you to submit the data into us. But on the 16th of October, we entered the first public pilot phase. We started with the simplest businesses we could on that. As we went along, we developed further functionality inside HMRC so that we could cope with more complex businesses and test out all of the functionality necessary. And a lot of that was internal, because, obviously, as we've mentioned before, it's just the 9-box data that is submitted to HMRC. But there was lots and lots of work going on internally to ensure that we could cope with all the different scenarios around more complex businesses, and we introduced them as we've moved along through the pilot until we've got to the stage now where we've been able to open it up entirely to all businesses that are mandated from April. So you must have compatible software to take part in the pilot, and I guess that's why everyone's here today. And one of the best things to do around that is speak to your software supplier. So you may already have used software that is submitting data into HMRC, but what you need to ensure that if you already have software is that you've spoken to that software supplier and it is enabled for MTD, and indeed they have instructed you on how to make sure your package has been enabled before you can submit data into HMRC. So one of the key points around Making Tax Digital as well, the last point on this slide, is that we need businesses and agents to sign up their clients to Making Tax Digital in a similar way to when you sign up to any tax regime initially to make submissions. We need to do that again for Making Tax Digital. We won't automatically pick businesses and move them into the Making Tax Digital regime. There is a sign-up process that needs to be followed, and I'll explain how that works. So we're joining the pilot, and this will only be valid for the rest of this month before we go live. But joining the pilot, and the system won't change. All of our sign-up pages are through gov.uk. So one of the best things to search for, and I use Google, but other search engines are available. If you search for use software to submit your VAT returns, and that will take you to the necessary guidance pages on gov.uk. For any agents, one of the terms to use is agents use software to submit your VAT returns, and that will take you to our agents step-by-step guide of all of the points that you need to cover before you sign up your clients to Making Tax Digital. So it's really, really important that that step-by-step guide is followed. The agent's journey is slightly more complex. There's a few more steps to go through. One of those is signing up for a new agent services account. So you'll do that through gov.uk. So this is in addition to any agent setups you already have for the government gateway. So we need a new account for Making Tax Digital. You may already have this account if you've been using the trust registration service, but if not, you can go and create this now. Once you've created your agent services account, you can link your current client lists to that agent services account, and that's a really quick process to do. You just have to sign into your agent services account and then click the link within there to sign into your existing agent account where your client list is held, and that automatically means the agent service account understands that you already have clients and those clients are set up for you. But one of the key points for agents is there is a step-by-step guide published on gov.uk, so please read that and make sure you understand and follow all those steps. It includes all the necessary links to guidance and pages that you need to complete those. For any businesses that are signing themselves up, it's a little more simple. You don't need a new account. You simply use the credentials that you already have for submitting data. So you may be logging into the portal to key in your 9-box data, or you may have used that through software, and it's that same set of credentials that you use for that. You simply have to nominate yourself into Making Tax Digital through the pages that's shown there on the slide. Okay. So I know I've mentioned some of the vital information that's out there, but it's really worth just reiterating what there is and where the help is that's out there. So there's the VAT notice, which is 700/22. So that's all your kind of legal basis and the real explanation of exactly what we're asking you to do for Making Tax Digital. That includes some really useful examples around multiple pieces of software, around spreadsheets being used, and around digital record keeping and all those things. We also have a list of the software developers that have MTD enabled software on gov.uk. There's a communications pack. And there are YouTube videos. So if you go to HMRC's YouTube channel, you can see videos around Making Tax Digital, what it means and how to sign up. And they're just a couple of minute videos, and they're really kind of easy to consume information that's included on those. And you know, please feel free to share any of those if you are agents with your clients to help explain what HMRC is doing and the changes that are involved. So here's just a little bit more information about that VAT notice. So it's the legal information, so who's affected, you know, the keeping of digital records and the sending of the data. It's really, really good to read. It's quite a lot of information in there, but certainly worth a read so you know exactly what the basis for everything is. And section 3.3 of that notice explains which records should be kept digitally for MTD. So if you've got any concerns around what should be kept digitally, please have a look at section 3.3. Okay. A little bit more information on the software pages that we've got there. So the list of software suppliers and what it means for them to be listed on there. So they've tested their products in the HMRC test environment. They've demonstrated a prototype of their software to HMRC, and we've seen what that does and been assured that it does all the things that we would expect it to do. And those software that finally gets listed on there, we've actually seen them make live submissions into HMRC with real customer data into our live environment, working without issue. And when they've passed all those points, we will list them as a recognised supplier. So we don't endorse or approve any supplier at all as HMRC. We just simply run those tests to make sure that they're doing the right things and they are going to work into our live environment. So anyone that's listed on our pages that are published there has run through those necessary steps for us. BTC obviously being one of those. I think there's over 200 software suppliers that we've now listed. A little bit more information on the communications pack. So this was pulled together to really help any organisation that wanted more information about Making Tax Digital, and this is the sort of the information that HMRC has produced. So please feel free to have a read of that, extract any necessary information you want to communicate with any of the businesses you work with, or act on behalf to explain to them exactly what MTD is and how it's working. So there's lots of information in there, including important facts and the advantages. There's key messages for agents. It's continually updated for if anything changes for the HMRC. So please refer back to that, and all of the necessary links you need will be included in there as well. Okay, so thank you for listening to my portion of this webinar. That's kind of the key messages from HMRC, passed over there of making tax digital, of why we're here and what we've done to get here. We're obviously looking forward to April now for the full go live of making tax digital, still in our public beta at the moment, but please feel free to join up if you want to get going already with that. All of the information contained on gov.uk, so that's your kind of source requirements for everything directly from HMRC, so please refer to that. So I'll pass back to Tim now. And bear with me, Tim, I'll just change the presenter back to you. Thanks very much.
Excellent, fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Mark. That was very much appreciated. What we will do from here on in, prior to opening up the webinar to questions, which we will do at the end of this kind of very brief overview of our bridging solution, one of which, as Mark mentions on his slide there. So, what I want to do is to provide a very kind of high-level view of our solution over the next kind of 10, maybe 15 minutes, and again we'll then open up the webinar to any questions you may have, either as a result of seeing the solution or in terms of Mark's earlier presentation. So I'm going to show the incarnation of the product that's designed for agents. As mentioned, it's a bridging solution. It's designed to work with up to 250 VAT returns at its base level as an agent. But the important point to mention here is we also have a variant that's designed for companies. So we do have a company version, both for smaller and larger companies. So without further ado, I'm going to open up the software. So the software is software as a service. It's completely web browser based. Having opened up the web browser page with the software loaded, I'm just going to enter in my colleagues' details as opposed to mine. Apologies for the rather loud typing. I'm often reprimanded in the office for typing too loudly. Okay, fantastic. So just to confirm, again, we're looking at the agent variant of the software. It is, as referenced, software as a service, so it's completely web browser based. I'm going to provide an overview of the software. In terms of who the software is designed for, well, it's designed, as I mentioned, for both agents and internal accountants in relation to businesses. Essentially, it's been designed as a bridging tool for agents whose clients may not be right for an online bookkeeping solution, or whereby the client feels as if they're being pushed onto a newer, potentially more expensive version of a bookkeeping solution and want to continue to work without making kind of considerable changes to their whole accounting procedure. And it's also designed for some larger companies actually who work with Excel, whereby Excel is the right option because an online bookkeeping package won't enable them to do what they need to do in terms of potentially groups and much larger detail associated with the VAT return. Okay, so you can see I've logged in as referenced as my colleague Dan Keane. The software, in terms of the agent version, will allow for up to 5 users. In addition to that, to the right of the username, I have a bell icon, which you may have borrowed from some other software provider. That's going to provide me all of my notifications. So any notifications which should and are sent to me will be acknowledged via the bell, so that will light up. And we have, in addition to that, some help guidance in relation to the software as well. What I will mention is the agent version is supported with full telephone support. In addition to that, we can also offer any training if it's deemed required, because what we try to do is to make the software as simplistic as possible, and we're not sure that actually full training is required, but we offer it with our core products, so we would offer it as part of an uptake of a subscription to BTCHub. Okay, so if you work from the left, you can see I'm on the home page at the moment. That lists my recent VAT returns and also recent clients whom I've onboarded. Below that, we have a split between those clients who are individuals and those who are B2B organizations. And then finally, on the top left-hand side of the page, we're going to come back to the VAT dashboard very quickly. We have a VAT report. Now, this is going to list all of my obligations. The ones in red are actually obligations which are currently outstanding. So that really provides that holistic view of all of your clients' obligations. If I click back onto the VAT dashboard, I just want to show you how you'd pick up a client having signed up for your agent services account. So essentially, I could create a client. Mark, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to pick your name because obviously you're on earlier. So I've created a client known as Mark Taylor. And what that will do, that will take me through, as you can see, to the revenue gateway. And I'm being asked for an agent. If I am, click continue. And from here, I'd enter in my details. And then sign accordingly. I'm then asked around the granting authority. And you can see that's pulled in my client's obligations. What I will do very shortly is explain how you can import the VAT return detail via Excel. So we actually have an Excel template. We've got some quick start guidance for practitioners listed here. So this is collateral for you to browse if you wish outside of the telephone support we offer, and quick start guide for businesses. We have an add-in. Now the add-in is designed to sit within Excel, and we'll look at that in literally the next couple of minutes. So we'll look at the add-in, and that really is the API that Mark referenced earlier. So what we're looking at here, what we will look at, isn't just a cut and paste option. It's actually an API from Excel into the hub for submission purposes. So it will likely go beyond that kind of soft landing period. So if we move into Excel, which I will do, you'll see here I have a VAT return summary listed. In addition to that, I have the details in terms of how I got to the VAT return summary. So we provide a template in terms of sales, other outputs, acquisitions, purchases, and EC sales. All of this data will automatically build up the 9-box totals within the VAT return summary. So that information that you're looking at the moment is the template which would be available for you to use. And as you can see, it's been built up by the accompanying detail. But it's just as Mark referenced, it's just the 9-box detail which is populated within our software for the purposes of the VAT submission. So what I can do from here is I can define the VAT range. Now that will be predefined. So by filling in the boxes, it will absolutely populate the relevant 9 boxes within the template. But what I will do is just show the VAT range. So you can see here I've shown the VAT range. The VAT range is now highlighted. So it's the 9 boxes plus the business name and really the VAT registration number and some of the return dates. So what I'm now looking to do is to move back into the hub. So we're in Excel. I'm going to move back into the hub by choosing the Export MTD VAT data. Okay, and as you can see, that data that was listed in the Excel spreadsheet is now showing within the confines of our solution in terms of BTCHub. It's populated detail. It's listed there for you. The crux here is that editing can't take place within the confines of the hub, because that breaks the digital link, but that will take place within Excel because, as Mark referenced as well, an Excel spreadsheet is listed as a digital link. Okay, so that's how, very, very simply, you would take the workings that have been determined via Excel. You don't have to use, one point to mention here, you don't have to use our template. but you will need to download the API. In addition to the Excel direct import, you also have the ability to, as you can see from the drop-down list here, to continue using existing bookkeeping options, whereby you may have been asked to upgrade to the next level. There isn't the onus to do that, because you can simply extract a CSV file, and then from there you're able to import that CSV file, which will build up the detail of the VAT return. So I'm going to select an option from the drop down. In this case, it will be Sage, and I'm going to browse for the relevant file. There we go. I've got a nice message to say that the data is valid. And then, as you can see, I've then imported the detail into the VAT return. So once we have the detail within the confines of the hub, i.e. the VAT return has been created, we then have the option to submit the VAT return. So unsurprisingly, we select the submit option. We just need to confirm that we've read the above legal declaration and have the authority to submit this particular VAT return, which we do. Click OK, and then as you can see, the obligation has changed from red to green and has been successfully submitted, albeit within the confines of this particular test environment. Obviously, for those of you who work with clients who have quarterly VAT submissions, you'll see the 4 obligations, but as it's a test environment, you just have the 2. And obviously, those who work on a monthly basis in terms of VAT submissions, you'll have 12 showing, I believe. Okay, so at any stage, we're able to view the submission receipt. We will be offering a PDF option of the submission receipt, and that will be retained for your usage. So hopefully that's provided a kind of a very brief overview. As mentioned, we'll happily provide demos of our solution for anyone that has an interest in exactly how the software works beyond what you've seen. But it is very, very simplistic, and we've made it simplistic for a reason, in that we're not trying to necessarily make a convoluted piece of software whereby people would potentially find themselves lost in the arena. We're just trying to make it as simplistic as possible. And from the feedback we've had thus far, I believe we've accomplished that. I think that's fair to say. Okay, so that is, again, that's the overview of the hub. I think what I should do from here is bring Mark back into the fold, and we will look at some of the questions which have been posed. But if you have any questions that you haven't posed already, do please feel free to tap them into the questions section of the invite, and we'll pick them up accordingly. Mark.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Tim. I've just been having a brief look at some of the questions now. I think most of them are probably for me to answer. So if you're happy, Tim, I'll run down those. And I think there's one that's just popped in at the end, would be more appropriate for you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the first question there is that many of our clients use our email address, and therefore, when signing up for MTD, can we use the email that shows on our client's VAT certificate, i.e. the agent email, or will the client need to consent via their own email? So when you sign up client for Making Tax Digital, they don't need to consent to that. You're already authorised to act on their behalf, and as long as that authorisation is in place through the agent services account and linked to your existing client lists, that is absolutely fine, and you can go ahead and link your clients to MTD without them needing to provide any authorization. Currently, as part of the pilot, we do ask for the client's email address, and that is to sign them up for paperless messaging. There are certain legal declaration messages that we have to send directly to the business for VAT, and as part of the pilot, by signing up, those messages will be populated into the business tax account, and getting their email address just allows us to drop them an email to say there's a message waiting for you. But that does not stop you pressing ahead and signing them up. And as I understand it, when we go live into April and into MTD fully live, that will be an optional requirement as well. So you can use the client's email or your email, however it kind of suits you and your client working together, but they do not need to provide an authorization as part of the sign-up process. So hopefully that answers that one. And I've had a question that is, please can you send a link for agents signing up clients for the MTD pilot? I can do that. I don't know, Tim, are you going to send out an email after this or anything about that we could be included on? I'm not sure. I think I'll have a word with Tim about exactly what we do around that to get it out to everyone who's attended. But if you do search on tickhub.uk or you use Google to search, if you search agents, use software to submit VAT returns, that you should find the link to the agent step-by-step guide, which shows you all of the necessary links and the points that you need to cover off on there. The next question is, for complex businesses, is the mandated date from October 19 or from April 2020? It is October 19 that those deferred group of complex businesses have until, so it definitely is from October 2019. The next question is, how do we authorize a client for MTD if we have linked the government gateway with MTD? So for any existing clients that you already have a relationship with, they can be linked to your agent services account. So once you've created your agent services account, you simply need to link your existing government gateway accounts where those client lists are held. That doesn't change your client list or move them into the agent services account in any way. And indeed, you won't actually be able to see that client list in the agent services account. But what it means is that the agent services account can see that data when the agent services account is being used going forward. If you need to authorize a new client as part of Making Tax Digital, maybe you're taking on someone new and you're going to do the Making Tax Digital element through that, you can also do that through the agent services account, and that is an entirely online process. There is a simple link to click. It creates a unique URL that you can provide to your customer, and they just need to click it and sign into their business tax account and authorize you. It's a really quick, simple process that way. But indeed, if you want to follow the existing process, so 64.8 process, to add them onto your existing agent's government gateway account, you can carry on doing that. And as long as the agent services account is linked to that account, it will automatically update the agent services account with that authorization as well. Okay, so the next question is, exactly when should a business sign up for MTD for VAT if they have a stagger of April, May, June quarter, given they will have not filed the March return by the 1st of April, and signing up will close access to the old portal? So I think one of the key points to remember here, and that's a really good question, is that you should only sign up your clients up for Making Tax Digital once they have completed their obligations under the old route. So get that last submission under the old route out of the way. Make sure the payment, if they're a direct debit customer, make sure the payment has actually left the account as well before you attempt to sign up, because as the question says, once you sign up for Making Tax Digital, your records at HMRC will start to move. So it takes about up to 72 hours for the records to move, but once the records have moved, we will expect the next submission to come through the Making Tax Digital software through that way. So make sure the last submission has been made through the old route, the payment has come out of their bank account if they are a direct debit customer, and give yourself at least a week to sign them up before the next submission is due. So on the April, May, June stagger, you get a month plus 7 days to do that. So it's August the 7th. The MTD submission would be due on that stagger. So you'd need to be making sure you'd signed up your client. I think give it at least 7 days just to get around any potential problems you may experience, any support you require for that. But once you are signed up, the next submission that becomes due has to be an MTD submission. So hopefully that answers that one. The next question on here, is there a bulk option? So I assume this question relates to signing up of clients in a bulk way, and the answer to that is a simple no. There isn't a bulk option to sign up clients. Each client must be signed up on a one-on-one basis. So there's a certain amount of questions when you're signing up a client that you will have to answer. You will need the VRN and some further information about their business and their setup, and we only provide the facility to do that on a one-on-one basis. Now, not every client will be required to submit at the same time or fall into mandation at exactly the same time. So hopefully that will help you spread the load of when they do need signing up for Making Tax Digital. But by signing up, you are declaring that they are ready to submit Making Tax Digital, and that's one of the things we need to make sure that you consider before you do sign up any of your clients. There is some concern around it. If there was a bulk option, that multiple clients would be signed up and who were not necessarily ready just yet. So that's kind of why it's a one-on-one basis. I think the rest of the questions, Tim, I think are more directed towards you on your side. So can I hand back to you at that point?
Please do. Thank you so much, Mark. So the next question reads, can the data be imported from older desktop versions of, say, QuickBooks? So the answer is yes. The best way around that would be to export the data within QuickBooks into a CSV file, and then there's a CSV option that you saw within that drop-down, which would enable you to import that CSV data into the hub and then populate the details of the VAT return. When exporting the CSV file from Sage, is this the full VAT detail report, the summary report, or just the return? So it's simply the detail that comes out of Sage is just the 9 boxes with an addition to the detail of the client. So the kind of what we would call the static data, so potentially the name of that number of the client. In some cases, it may just be the 9 totals, essentially, which you would need to export from Sage and then directly import into the hub. When the hub will be available for using, so when will the hub be available for using, I believe? The hub is available right here, right now. So we already have clients who are using the hub, submitting their VAT returns in the new way. And then there's a question around some of the charges. So just to kind of confirm, the cost of solution is £250 to work with up to 250 VAT returns. So if they're all quarterly clients in terms of their VAT submissions, then you can work with no test here because I've got a room full of accountants. 62, 63 clients. Reading through some of the questions. There may be a few that might be best off covered by you. There's one in relation here, Mark, to the different schemes in terms of retail and flat rate schemes. Is that something you'd like to cover?
Yeah, bear with me. I'll just find that question. So I can't find the question, but I mean, in general, all of the nothing is changing around how VAT is operated, and all of the schemes remain in place. So all of those schemes are supported right now through the pilot, and will definitely be ready for April for joining around there. So as you are doing now, you can run those schemes. They will just need to comply with the mandatory digital record keeping elements, and then the submission comes through in the same way in the 9 boxes to HMRC. But all of the schemes are supported under Making Tax Digital.
Fantastic. I think that's going to probably draw a close to today's presentation. There are a number of questions that we haven't had the option to respond to based on time allowance. I think what might be a good idea, if I were to collate the questions at the end of the session, I could share the questions potentially with Mark, and we can furnish you all with answers to your questions. So we're not ignoring them. We will respond to them, but there are too many really to respond to right here, right now within the hour session. So I think without further ado, I'll thank everybody for their attendance. It's much appreciated. And thank you also, Mark, so much for that. That was very informative from my perspective. And keep the questions coming open, because what I will do is I will kind of keep the session open for maybe the next 20 minutes. So any more questions that you care to put our way, again, I will have them collated within sort of half an hour or so, and then I'll turn off the session, and then we'll get back to you with the appropriate answers. So, everybody, thank you for your attendance. I'm sure Mark would like to finish as well.
Yep, thank you very much for listening this morning, everybody. I'm full of cold at the moment, so hopefully that didn't come across too badly, but thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody.